All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samantha Aldrich. I'm a revitalization specialist with the Department of State, and I, along with a few of my colleagues, will be taking you through today's webinar. We also do have Kim Marie Kosick online as well for ASL interpretation for those that may need it. The webinar will cover the New York State Downtown Revitalization Initiative Round 9 and New York Forward Round 4 applications. We will review the application requirements and the evaluation criteria for both programs. And while we will not be answering any questions as part of this webinar today, we encourage you to submit an intent to apply, which will allow you to access technical assistance with our consultants who can provide you guidance specific to your community's application. We'll discuss the letter of intent process later in today's webinar as well. So the agenda for today's webinar includes a review of the DRI and New York Forward programs, as well as the program eligibility requirements. We'll provide helpful hints on how to develop your community's application and how to submit a complete application for consideration by your respective regional economic development council. So we're going to go through what the DRI and New York Forward programs are specifically. This funding opportunity, which was announced by Governor Kathy Hochul, marks the 9th round of the DRI and 4th round of New York Forward. The programs together will provide $200 million to communities across New York State. The DRI will invest $10 million in one community in 9 REDC regions, except for New York City, where there will be one $20 million award. For the New York Forward program, the REDCs will select 2 communities per REDC region, each with a $4.5 million award, excluding the New York City region. The DRI and New York Forward program goals are very similar in that they strive to create active downtowns that are vibrant, have a robust mix of uses, and support diverse populations. The DRI focuses on more dense downtowns, while the New York Forward program targets small scale and rural downtowns. So in order to achieve this, both programs intend to create vitality in neighborhoods that attract businesses and investment to grow the local tax base, support diverse populations through housing opportunities and amenities, while also creating unique, vibrant spaces that are welcoming for all, and ensuring while we're doing all of those things, we're thinking about long-term sustainability of our communities through the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and thinking about resiliency as a whole. The DRI was launched back in 2016 to accelerate the revitalization of downtowns in each of the 10 REDC regions across the state. The purpose of the program is to create healthy, vibrant areas that provide residents and visitors 4-season opportunities while focusing on the development or the redevelopment of properties for business growth, economic and housing diversity, and job creation. Not only is the DRI focused on individual downtowns, but it's also intended to reinvigorate larger regional economies as well. In the application packet that's located online, we included a list of community characteristics that a DRI may have, while also recognizing that each of the state's downtowns and regions are unique and that not everyone may be reflected in these descriptions. Generally, DRI communities are larger than a New York Forward community, but they commonly are walkable, have dense centers that serve the regional community. They have the types of amenities whether they're open spaces, special events, programming, business centers, or job nodes that are attractive and bring in people from the larger surrounding area. Typically, they have multimodal transportation options, including public transportation, as well as options for vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle users. They can be an employment center for a regional economy. They can offer amenities and destinations that help them to serve as a tourism node or center within the larger region. They have or allow for higher density development. And there is existing or a potential for multi-story buildings, including opportunities for upper story housing. Just to reiterate again, $10 million will be allocated to each region, with the caveat that New York City this round will be receiving one $20 million award. This will be awarded to either one community or a joint application of 2 to 3 smaller contiguous communities with a single unified revitalization vision. An initial $300,000 from the $10 million award is used to pay for professional consulting services that are applied in the planning phase of the program. This $300,000 investment results in the development of what we call a strategic investment plan, and we'll discuss this a little bit more in the presentation as well. Applications are then submitted to the appropriate Regional Economic Development Council, who then nominates the community for DRI funding. One of the application requirements is identifying potential projects within your community. So in DRI communities, these are often larger, private, mixed-use projects. They may include new development or adaptive reuse of existing buildings. It can also include projects that elevate an urban downtown character and enhance a regional draw to the DRI area. Public sector projects may include streetscapes, improving public spaces, or creating new public spaces. Other projects that may be eligible include development of design guidelines, wayfinding projects, and marketing strategies, all with the goal of helping to facilitate investment and interest in the downtown area. Applicants applying for the DRI should demonstrate that the area is able to invest more than the $10 million award in funding, with shovel-ready projects and opportunities to fully utilize that award. Next slide, please. So switching gears to the New York Forward program, this program was designed specifically to invest in New York's smaller and often more rural communities. So thinking about those smaller hamlets, villages, and neighborhood scale municipal centers, as opposed to the DRI, which is focused on larger downtown cores. The overarching goals of the program are consistent with the intent to attract more businesses, residents, and visitors, while also providing a higher quality of life for residents. The community characteristics of a New York Forward community may fall into the descriptions on the screen. These characteristics could include a boundary similar to the DRI in that it should be walkable and concentrated. However, these may be less dense than DRI areas. And the focus may be more on serving the needs of the immediate local community versus the larger regional economy. Oftentimes, communities will be a bit more vehicular dependent and may have more limited public transportation options. Community centers are typically service-oriented, geared toward the local community, but also provide employment and job growth within the area. Oftentimes, New York Forward communities will have the characteristics of what we like to call small town charm, representing a unique history, heritage, agriculture, or tourism focus, such as a historic Erie Canal hamlet or a business improvement district. And finally, typically the density and scale of these areas include 2 to 4 story buildings that still may provide some opportunity for upper story housing. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, did we skip one? Thank you. The REDCs in each region will nominate 2 communities to receive a $4.5 million New York Forward Award, excluding the New York City region. Unlike DRI, the costs related to technical assistance and development of the strategic investment plan will not be deducted from the community award. Similar to the DRI, however, potential projects may include the renovation, redevelopment, and adaptive reuse of existing buildings, which will tend to be the focus over new construction. Projects should primarily focus on addressing vacancy and rehabilitation of existing structures. However, some construction or the creation of new spaces within those buildings may also be included and considered. Applicants should be able to demonstrate at least $6 to $8 million worth of New York Forward funds for projects, and those projects should be ready to be implemented in the short term. All right, so now that we have an understanding of the programs, let's walk through the application. It would be helpful to have the application in front of you if it's available, but if not, that's okay. The full application package is available on both of the state's DRI and New York Forward websites, and the website addresses are included at the end of this presentation. The application package overall includes 7 sections, which we'll walk through quickly, but also talk about in more detail and how they relate to the steps required for submission of a full application. So that first section in the application talks about resources and deadlines. The second section provides an overview of the DRI and New York Forward programs. The goal of this section is to help you decide which funding program is the best fit for your community. So here you can think a little bit more about community characteristics that we just talked through, and the types of projects that are desired and eligible within each of the programs. And this will help determine which program may be the best fit. The third section covers the intent to apply. The letter of intent is due by October 17th, and we'll talk about what this means in a few slides. Section 4 covers application tips and best practices, including some resources and ideas to help you build a strong application. Section 5 talks about the evaluation criteria. It provides an understanding of what the regional economic development councils are looking for as they review applications that come in for their specific regions. The 6th section provides the required application components. We'll discuss each of these components and provide you as an applicant with tips on what types of information to include. And then lastly, section 7 includes an overview of the submission requirements, how to submit your application, and make sure it's submitted on time and in the correct format. And from here, I'm going to hand it to Matt Smith, who will talk a little bit more about eligibility criteria and the application process overall.
Great, thanks, Sam. Again, I'm Matt Smith with Department of State, project manager covering the Capital Region. And I'm going to go through program eligibility criteria and the application process. So an important first question is who can apply to the DRI and New York Forward programs? So both programs are open to any New York State town, city, or village. And although municipalities are permitted to apply for both of the programs, they're urged to determine which program is the best fit. And again, a community can refer back to the community characteristics and project eligibility to help make that determination. Counties and special districts, such as fire districts, are not eligible to apply. However, many of those other agencies and organizations can be really great partners to include within this process. So while they can't be the primary applicant, they can certainly be important stakeholders and collaborators when putting together the application. For DRI only, joint applications will be accepted for 2 or 3 downtowns in the same REDC region that have a shared vision and goal. And the New York Forward program does not permit this joint application, given the lower funding amount. Also, something worth noting is that municipalities that receive a DRI award in rounds 1 through 8 are eligible to apply, but for a different area than their previous award, if the awarded projects that were previously awarded are substantially complete. Geographic portions within a mapped DRI strategic investment area may be eligible for inclusion in a new DRI or New York Forward application if no projects were funded within that overlapping area. For the New York City boroughs, the eligibility and process are just slightly different. So I'll highlight that here. So for communities in New York City applying to either of the programs, it's a 2-step process. Official applicants are the offices of the borough presidents. Organizations interested in proposing an area for DRI should submit their application to the respective office of the borough president. And then after applications are submitted to the borough president, each of the borough presidents will develop and submit up to 2 applications for DRI round 9 for consideration by the New York City REDC. We'll see in a few slides how this additional step affects the timeline for New York City applicants. As a reminder, all email addresses for the borough president's office staff are found in the DRI New York Forward application. So on to pro housing certification. Prior to submitting an application for DRI New York Forward, city, town, and village applicants must have either submitted a letter of intent or already be certified by the Office of Homes and Community Renewal as a pro housing community. Prior to award announcement by the state, all communities must be certified as a pro housing community. So I suggest if you're intending on applying to submit a letter of intent and then start the process for getting full certification. Please visit the website hcr.ny.gov/PHC for pro housing community for more information about becoming a certified pro housing community. One of the questions we've heard is, can you apply to both the DRI and the New York Forward programs? The simple answer is yes. While you may choose to submit one area for both programs, we encourage you to consider carefully right-sizing your applications to the different program award amounts. Communities looking to apply to both programs will need to submit 2 applications, one under the DRI CFA portal and one under the New York Forward CFA portal. An example of what you would see when starting an application in the portal is shown on the screen. If you're applying to both the DRI and New York Forward programs, one application may be submitted if the New York Forward area is the same as or a sub-area of the DRI area. If the New York Forward area is not fully contained within the DRI area, please submit separate applications, one for the New York Forward area and one for the DRI area. So I think this is important, so I'll just repeat that. If your New York Forward area is smaller but fully contained within the DRI area, you can click the both button to apply to both programs. However, if you have separate New York Forward and DRI areas, or your New York Forward area is smaller but also includes an area not included in the DRI area, please submit separate applications. If you aren't familiar with the CFA portal application process, we suggest reviewing the CFA portal guide, which we included a link to at the end of this presentation. Okay, so for the schedule, here's a general schedule for application and announcements for both programs. This current round of DRI New York Forward officially kicked off with the release of the application on September 3rd. The intent to apply is due by October 17th. So for the New York City folks, submittals for New York City only are due on October 31st, submitted electronically to the relevant borough president's office. For all other applicants outside of New York City, the deadline for the application is Friday, November 7th, and that includes both the DRI and New York Forward applications. These will be submitted through the New York State CFA portal. The state is anticipating awards will be announced on a rolling basis, similar to how they have been announced in past rounds of the DRI. It is expected that the planning process for both programs will begin in spring of 2026. One-on-one technical assistance is also being provided to municipalities applying to either programs if desired. This will consist of office hours with technical experts that have experience in both programs. You are guaranteed access to these office hours if interested if you submit an intent to apply on or before October 17th. If your intent to apply is received after the 17th, you're not guaranteed access to the office hours, but we will make every effort to ensure that you still have the opportunity. Once the intent to apply is submitted, you will receive a link to register for office hours. The US has also partnered with the Land Use Law Center of Pace University to provide a series of webinars that will help communities not only think about how they approach the application for DRI or New York Forward funding, but also more generally to think about how they are approaching future revitalization planning for their communities. All webinars are housed on the state's website and can be found at the below link in the blue banner. We highly encourage applicants to view these webinars. They are great resources and super helpful in sort of navigating the process. This link will also has webinars about the characteristics of strong revitalization projects, collaborating with regional planning boards, attracting investments to downtowns, among other topics. Again, contact information for all the RADCs is provided on this screen and within the application package. You may utilize these respective contacts if you have any questions. At this point, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Susan Lanfried, to cover parts 3 and parts 4 of the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Matt. So with that, let's jump into the nuts and bolts of the development of your application. So the overall traits of a strong application are first and foremost meeting all of the minimum program requirements, including all of the content requested in the application, and then making sure that the information is presented in a complete, concise, and thoughtfully considered response. A strong application is informed by robust community engagement, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that may look like in just a few moments. Community engagement should inform the creation of a community-based vision for the future of the downtown, and any projects that are identified should support and be well aligned with that community vision. Project readiness and projects that are feasible and have been identified in coordination with the property owners and project sponsors are also imperative to a successful application. The identified projects should present a holistic approach to revitalization, and projects should play off one another and together spur change. There are 10 components that must be included within the application and one optional element. Again, we want to reiterate how important it is to make sure that all of these elements are addressed in the application package. The 10 required components include the cover page, identification and justification of the proposed boundary, a draft vision statement, a summary of past investment and future potential, a summary of recent and impending job growth, a description of quality of life characteristics, a narrative related to supportive local policies that are already in place within your community, a description of public support for your application, identification of transformative project opportunities, and the ability to administer the DRI or New York Forward program, both in the planning and implementation phase. Lastly, letters of support are an optional element within the application package, but they are strongly encouraged to show support in partnerships between various entities. We are now going to walk you through responding to each of these application components. The application is very clear on what information needs to be included on the cover page. Please include the name of the REDC region in your community in which your community is located, the program or programs to which you are applying, the name of your municipality, the name of your downtown area, the name of the county in which your community is located, the primary contact for your application, who is the person that the REDC and the Department of State can reach out to regarding your application, and your community's pro-housing certification status. If you are submitting a joint application to the DRI program, please be sure to include all municipality and downtown names on the cover page. Excuse me, one moment. Okay. With regards to the project boundary, applicants must include a map that shows the proposed area that they are recommending for the DRI or New York Forward program. It's worth noting that this boundary has some flexibility and it may be modified slightly during the planning process. The area can range from a corridor or a few blocks of a neighborhood to the entirety of a traditional central business district. There are no absolute minimum or maximum sizes, but a successful and strong boundary will be concentrated and should be easily walkable. Additionally, boundaries to the greatest extent possible should follow parcel lines or roadways. In addition to including a map and a description of the proposed boundary, applicants should also provide a short narrative describing how investment within this concentrated area will help catalyze new investment and revitalization. A separate map will also need to be uploaded to the CFA portal with the application package. These are a few examples of DRI and New York Forward boundaries from past rounds to provide some context and comparison. The Seneca Falls DRI boundary includes 118 acres and encompasses two sides of the canal. Every destination within the DRI area is within a 10-minute walk. The Fulton DRI boundary is a little larger in scale at 185 acres. Although larger and more elongated, the boundary is cohesive as the downtown is linear in shape. The Lancaster, New York Forward boundary is compact at about 97 acres, centered around the downtown core. Ultimately, the boundary should reflect the unique characteristics of your downtown area and be justifiable in how it relates to the whole. Please make sure to show the boundaries so they are clearly identifiable on a map for reviewers. The vision statement is critical to setting the direction for the DRI or New York Forward area. It's very important that the vision statement be identified and developed based on information gathered through community outreach. The vision statement should not be developed by one person sitting in an office, but should be based on what the community wants to see. The statement should reflect the unique nature of the downtown or neighborhood proposed, as well as the long-term aspirations of the community. So thinking ahead, not just what the community is today, but what the community aspires to be in 3, 5, or even 10 years down the road. Here are some examples of DRI and New York Forward vision statements. These examples are from Ticonderoga, Newark, and Sleepy Hollow. As you can see through each of these vision statements, they focus on different elements that are important to their downtown areas, and they are not easily transferable to another community. They speak to the specific needs and desires of the residents of that community and include descriptive language that highlights the community's unique assets, which can help form the basis for revitalization. Applicants must also detail recent investments in and around the DRI or New York Forward area to demonstrate that it is able and ready to capitalize on the prior public and private investment, as well as catalyze future investments to truly transform the downtown area. The section of the application should summarize past investments such as streetscape, or improvement projects, improvements to parks and recreation areas, new attractions or businesses, and other investments that have been made in and around the area. But in addition, the narrative should also touch on and be thinking about readiness to accommodate new projects and programs that might emerge out of this process. The narrative should answer the following questions. Are past investments, as well as those proposed in the application, consistent with the REDC's priorities and with smart growth principles? Are there existing properties that are vacant or in need of rehab? Is there infrastructure to support new development? Are there already anchor institutions in place that can act as important partners and collaborators to facilitate growth? Has municipal investment and commitment been made in the downtown, either through public dollars or through oversight and facilitation of grants by the municipality? Is there opportunity to develop energy efficient projects and/or create green jobs? With regards to recent and impending job growth, applicants should highlight the availability of jobs and job growth within or near the downtown. Have there been any new projects either within the past 5 years or any planned or upcoming projects that will create new jobs? Are there any existing companies that are expanding or new companies coming into the community that will create more jobs? If so, please detail how that job growth will attract a more diverse workforce, support planned redevelopment efforts, and make growth sustainable in the long term. The application also asks applicants to identify the potential for the area to become an attractive and livable community for a diverse population. So think about how your community can support residents and visitors of all ages, incomes, abilities, and cultural backgrounds, and how it can improve the overall quality of life. Within this section, you may focus on developing a narrative that talks about opportunities within your community for housing, both existing or proposed, to fill gaps and ensure that it's available at different levels of affordability and type. Also think about how commercial and retail businesses are being supported both today and envisioned in the future. For example, discuss how the downtown can support a variety of food options and choices, particularly emphasizing the availability of healthy food options for all residents. It would also be helpful to discuss how the downtown area will provide or support community gathering spaces, special events and programming, and access to academic, cultural, and entertainment amenities. Applications will also be assessed based on whether the community has other supportive local policies in place. These may be policies that are already in place within the community or that are in the process of being developed. This section should include the identification of any other planning documents that are inclusive of the DRI or New York Port area, whether it be a comprehensive plan, a downtown master plan, economic development strategy, part of a local waterfront revitalization program, or maybe of a brownfield opportunity area is just a few examples. Modern zoning codes and zoning updates, particularly those that have a focus on sustainability, should also be noted and mentioned in your application. If your community has been designated a clean energy community or a climate smart community, please note that in your application as well. If you have a downtown management entity, a business improvement district, or a local land bank, those are organizations that can also be helpful to DRI and New York Forward, and those should be identified in the application. Other policies may include transit-oriented development or complete streets policies. Any non-discrimination laws or protections of diverse populations should also be identified, as well as any policies that would make your community eligible for an age-friendly community certification. This is just a sample list of the types of policies and plans that should be noted and identified in your application to show your community's commitment to meeting the goals of the DRI and New York Forward programs. Again, as previously stated, public support and feedback is critical to the DRI and New York Forward programs. Applicants must host at least one public event during the development of the application, so between now and application submission deadline. However, this is a bare minimum and broader community outreach is strongly encouraged. In addition to the one required public event, in past years, communities have done open calls for project proposals to solicit ideas from property owners and community members about which projects they feel would be most transformative in their downtown. Other applicants have developed a project website so they can ensure there's full transparency with regards to the process, as well as a means to receive feedback and information. Many communities, especially as we get into the end of summer and early fall, are holding special events and programs, and those are a great time and opportunity to reach a captive audience to discuss the application. You might consider setting up a table at a community meeting or event, or gather community feedback in some other way. If there were other recent or ongoing planning initiatives, such as the creation of a complete streets plan or an update to a comprehensive plan that included broader visioning, Those projects and that engagement activity should also be summarized within the application as contributing to the community engagement for this process. Municipalities are required to identify a range of transformative projects that are ready and poised for implementation. Projects may be public or private and should align with the community's vision as well as the state's goals. Typically, transformative projects should be vetted, or should be publicly supported and should be vetted as part of the public outreach just discussed. They should also demonstrate benefits to the broader community and not just to the individual project sponsor, or property owner. They should be ready for implementation within the next few years. So other resources that may be needed or other pre-development work that may be required prior to implementing the project should be able to be completed within that time frame. Projects should leverage other funding sources to the greatest extent possible. It would be ideal that DRI or New York Forward funding is not the only funding source identified, particularly for private sector projects. DRI and New York Forward funding should help fill the gap in financing to make a project feasible and successful. And then ultimately, the project sponsor must have the ability to implement the project and sustain the proposed project after funding is awarded. For more information on the qualities of these transformative projects, check out a webinar about these types of projects available at the link on the screen. Administrative capacity of the applicant and municipality is also important, not only in the planning phase, but to help manage the planning process, but also to assist with the implementation of projects that may be awarded funding. The application narrative should provide an explanation for how existing municipal staff and resources will be utilized to oversee the planning process, as well as the contracts for awarded projects. How the community will approach operations and maintenance of any municipal projects after they are constructed should also be noted in this section. Responses should also highlight key potential partners that can support the community in administering the grant and project implementation. Potential partners may include counties, regional planning commissions or boards, industrial development agencies, local development corporations, and more. And lastly, letters of support are optional, but are certainly recommended to show the commitment of local leaders, partners, stakeholders, and other organizations within the community. The letters of support should focus on how the funding could help advance the community's vision, how a partner or stakeholder writing the letter might participate in the planning process and help ensure its success, and how they may be involved in supporting the implementation of the proposed projects if they are funded. All right, and now we'll go on to the steps to make sure you're submitting a complete application. Okay. So last, we're going to review the general requirements to make sure that they are clear and that nobody misses anything that's critically important to submitting a complete application. In addition to double checking your application checklist and ensuring that all 10 required components of the application are done, and possibly the letters of support, please also ensure that your application is as complete and succinct as possible. Applications are limited to 20 pages, and this includes any maps or graphics. The cover page and any letters of support that you do decide to include do not count to that 20-page limit. Applications must be submitted in a single PDF document that is 30 megabytes or smaller in size via the CFA portal. Applicants will also be asked to upload a standalone map, a document in addition to the application PDF. Okay. Again, here are the 11 components of the application, the 10 required ones, and the optional letters of support. Please don't forget that on the cover page, you should be indicating the status of your pro-housing certification and where you are in that process. Another quick review and reminder of the application deadlines. In New York City, applications must be submitted via email to the Office of the Borough President no later than 4 p.m. on October 31st. For all other regions, applications must be uploaded and submitted through the CFA portal no later than 4 p.m. on Friday, November 7th. The intents to apply are also due on October 17th to be guaranteed access to the one-on-one technical assistance. And then you can also use this link you'll see on the screen to access the CFA portal. Okay. In closing, just a reminder that there is a wealth of background information and resources, links to the capacity building webinars, information on successful implemented DRI projects, and links to successful applications for both the DRI and New York Forward programs on the state's websites. Those websites are listed here on the screen. Also listed is the CFA resource guide, which will be helpful for those applicants that are not as familiar with the CFA portal and how to create, upload, and submit applications. We want to thank you very much for joining us and listening in, and wish you the best of luck in developing your applications. We will not be taking any questions today, but we strongly encourage you to submit a request for an intent to apply so you can take advantage of the one-on-one technical assistance and answer any questions then. Thank you all very much for attending, and have a good rest of your day.